lends itself to cross-generation GOAT debates quite like the NBA. But those debates have grown stale, with people engaging in heated discussions about players and eras they were too young to even witness. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan's incomparable mystique makes it tough to have an honest basketball conversation that includes his airness. So, we started thinking about a more practical discussion involving post-Jordan players we were able to watch, appreciate, and evaluate in real time. It also struck us that there's now been a clean cutoff of 25 seasons since Jordan's last dance with the Bulls. And with all due respect to Jordan's underrated Wizards tenure, the NBA's unofficial post-Jordan era tipped off with his second retirement following his 6th championship in Chicago. The lockout-shortened 1998-99 season then, which saw the debuts of future legends like Dirk Nowitzki, Paul Pierce, and Vince Carter, the first of 5 championships for Tim Duncan's Spurs, and the continued rise of stars like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, and Kevin Garnett, is the perfect starting point for this exercise, bookended by the modern three-point and unicorn revolution. To come up with the top 25 players of the last 25 years, or the top 25 players of the post-Jordan era, we considered each player's body of work between the 1998-99 season and the 2022-23 campaign, disregarding anything accomplished beforehand or outside of the association. Now, a 25-year window makes it difficult for today's youngsters to compete against Hall of Famers who enjoyed more than a decade of success during this time. Still, undeniable phenoms like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and even 24-year-old Luka Doncic found themselves in the mix. We'll get to those guys once we unveil our rankings. First, let's go over some of our honorable mentions. The only MVPs from this era to fall short of our top 25 were Derrick Rose and Karl Malone. The mailman won his second and final MVP award in the first season of this window, and added 3 more All-Star and All-NBA selections during the period in question. But the last 6 seasons of Malone's career weren't enough to outshine stars who saw their primes and entire careers play out during this time. For example, Malone's 415 games played during our time frame were 71 fewer than Yao Ming, whose injuries and lack of playing time kept him off this list. As for Rose, his brief but electric peak had him in preliminary contention. He was at one time the youngest MVP in history, but injuries kept him from putting together the kind of sustained run required to make such an exclusive list. Andre Iguodala, Tony Parker, and Chauncey Billups are the only finals MVPs from the last 25 champions you won't find here. Parker was a 6-time All-Star and 4-time champion, while Mr. Big Shot was the ultimate floor general. Both would have cracked a top 35 list. As fine a player and locker room leader as Iguodala was for 19 years, his career didn't quite measure up. And let's be honest, that 2015 Finals MVP award rightly belonged to LeBron James or Steph Curry. Carmelo Anthony, with 28,289 points to his name, is by far the top scorer to miss the cut. And there will surely be a number of outraged Melo truthers breaking their screens right now. I get it, Melo was a great player and tremendous volume scorer for a long time. A jab-stepping throwback to a bygone era who could get his shot off whenever and wherever he wanted against whoever had the misfortune of guarding him. But if Melo was as pure and effortless a scorer as his admirers suggest he was, then why did he never score as efficiently as the legends who made this list ahead of him? Whether a knock on his abilities or his shot selection, Anthony produced a below-average true shooting percentage in 11 of his 19 seasons, according to Basketball Reference. The point of this video is to celebrate the greatest players of our generation, not to tear icons like Melo down, but to create such an exclusive shortlist from the golden age of star talent and team depth. Hard truths must be confronted. To give you an idea of how tough it was to crack the final rankings, consider that our most difficult omissions also included Ray Allen, Tracy McGrady, Pau Gasol, Carter, and Paul George. Before we get to our top 25 players of the last 25 years, just a reminder to like, subscribe, and hit us up in the comments with your feedback. You can also find full write-ups for all 25 players at the links in the description. All we ask is that if you advocate for your favorite player or most egregious snub, you also have to tell us which of these 25 legends you'd remove to make room for your guy. Alright, now let's get to the list. At number 25, it's Luka Doncic. Some of you may be losing your minds over Doncic making this list despite only playing 5 years in the league, especially given some of the Hall of Famers we already told you missed the cut. But consider this, Only 9 players over the last 25 years earned more All-NBA first-team selections than Doncic has over his first 5 years in the league. Luka has already spent more time as a top 5-ish player in the game than a lot of Hall of Famers ever did. Meanwhile, his 27.6 points per game is tops among the 2,416 players who've set foot on an NBA court over the last quarter century, while his 8 assists per game ranked 10th. At 24, it's Damian Lillard. In order to crack this exclusive list while being widely accepted as a terrible defensive player, one has to be absolutely transcendent offensively. Lillard is that and then some. Only 20 players in history have scored more through their first 11 seasons. Lillard is one of 8 players ever to score 70 or more points in a game. He's one of only 2 players, the other being Wilt Chamberlain, to score 60 or more points 3 times in the same season. There aren't enough ways to describe how explosive a scorer Lillard is, and that's before mentioning he ranks 5th in assists since his 2012 debut. Coming in at number 23, it's Anthony Davis. Davis's defensive accolades, 4 all-defensive teams but no Defensive Player of the Year awards, don't do justice to how good he's been at that end. Injuries and the years he spent trying to carry thin Pelicans teams to respectability didn't help, but a healthy AD is a near-perfect modern big man defender. An ultra-long, ultra-quick, mobile rim protector who can anchor any scheme and hang with anyone on a switch. He's no slouch on the offensive end either, where he's arguably the greatest pick-and-roll finisher of all time. At number 22, it's the captain and the truth, Paul Pierce. Foe to both Kobe and LeBron, Pierce's combination of longevity, two-way play, and an underrated prime made him an easy selection. Compare Pierce to McGrady, for example, one of our toughest omissions. The Hall of Famers shared parallel 7-year peaks from about 2000 through 2007, during which time Pierce posted surprisingly comparable numbers on better efficiency while enjoying more team success. T-Mac was slightly better at his absolute best, but Pierce hung around the fringes of the league's top tier during his prime and remained an all-star caliber player long enough to eventually reap the benefits of a star-studded supporting cast that helped him win a championship and a Finals MVP award. One of the most durable stars imaginable, Pierce averaged 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists on nearly 57% true shooting over a 14-year run between his age 22 and age 35 seasons, then continued breaking much younger men's hearts into his late 30s. Occupying the number 21 spot is Joel Embiid, whose combination of size and skill is mind-blowing. His coordination, touch, footwork, agility, and the raw power of his near 300-pound frame have made him one of the most imposing two-way players of the modern era. The NBA's most prolific post scorer since entering the league, Embiid has also turned himself into a high-volume 50% mid-range shooter with an offensive skill set that includes face-ups, jab steps, euro stepping finishes, and pull-up jumpers. In winning his first MVP and second scoring title, Embiid put together the 3rd most efficient 30-plus point season ever. All that, and he's nearly a top 10 defense unto himself. Perennial postseason injuries and flameouts are the only things keeping Embiid from climbing higher. Sliding in at number 20, it's Jimmy Butler. Butler's NBA career is one of the great development stories in league history. He's grown from a defensive-minded youngster into the type of alpha superstar capable of averaging nearly 24 points per game, as he did in 2016-17, averaging 7.1 assists, as he did in 2020-21, or shooting 56% from two-point range, 35% from deep, and 85% from the free throw line, as he did in 2022-23. The two-way beast has never played on a losing team, has made the playoffs 12 times in 13 years, and has earned a reputation as one of the great postseason performers in league history. Dwight Howard, or rather Superman, is in the building at number 19. At his best, Howard's combination of size, strength, explosiveness, and defensive instincts made him one of the most feared big men in league history. His height and slightly underdeveloped offensive repertoire may have held him back, but he was still virtually unstoppable for a good half-decade. On the defensive end, he had no equal among his contemporaries, as evidenced by the fact no one else has ever won 3 consecutive Defensive Player of the Year awards. As the 2000s gave way to the 2010s, Howard battled LeBron, Kobe, and D. Rose for league supremacy, finishing top 5 in MVP voting in 4 straight seasons. Even as back injuries robbed him of the trademark athleticism that made him the tallest dunk contest winner, Howard remained an impact player into his late 20s and a productive player even longer. His prime may have been cut short, and his locker room reputation may work against him, but Howard's an easy choice as one of the top players of his era. The answer to who's number 18 is none other than Allen Iverson. Iverson's 27.6 points per game during this era ranks second, while the three-time steals champion tops all players over the last 25 years at 2.2 steals per game, though his coaches may tell you he was a defensive gambler. Through a modern lens, his efficiency, lack of postseason success outside of 2001, and aversion to practice leaves something to be desired. But the answer was so much more than shooting percentages and sound bites. It wasn't always conducive to winning basketball, but damn it if AI didn't give every last drop of his 6-foot, 165-pound frame. The undersized workhorse poured his heart out on the court, and his authenticity off of it made him a cultural icon. Few players in history have marched to the beat of their own drum or inspired a controversial dress code like Iverson did. At number 17, it's Jason Kidd. Kidd was never a high-volume or efficient scorer, but he made up for it in so many other ways. He was one of the best pure passers, one of the smartest players, one of the best perimeter defenders, and probably the best rebounding point guard of his day. Even at the age of 38, he was the leading minutes getter, highest volume three-point shooter, and occasional primary LeBron defender for the title-winning Mavericks. Russell Westbrook comes in at number 16. One of the most prolific players in league history, Westbrook's combination of speed, explosiveness, relentlessness, and frankly recklessness has made him one of the most entertaining athletes of his time. As a running mate to Kevin Durant, he was one of the greatest secondary stars of his era. As a main character, he was an unstoppable force, an unabating ball of energy who went for the jugular from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Over the first 70 years of NBA basketball, Oscar Robertson was the only player to average a triple-double over an entire season, and he did it once. Between 2017 and 2021, Westbrook accomplished the feat 4 times in 5 seasons. Over the last 25 years, he ranks 5th in total assists and 10th in points. His shot selection, off-ball indifference, and defensive decision-making keep him from climbing higher on this list. But as fans of the game, we're fortunate that Russ does things his way. On-court consequences be damned. Moving us into the top 15, it's Steve Nash, one of the greatest offensive engines we've ever seen. Nash made everyone he played with better. And though he'll primarily be remembered as the best distributor of his generation, he was also a terrific scorer. An all-time great shooter who owns career averages of 42.8% from three-point range and 90.4% from the free throw line. Nash owns 4 of the NBA's 14 official 50-40-90 seasons. Over a 9-season span between 2001 and 2010, the team Nash ran point for led the league in offensive rating 8 times. He also captained 4 of the 6 most efficient offenses in NBA history when adjusting for league average. Nash's 7 seconds or less Suns helped turn the entire NBA into an up-tempo, spread pick-and-roll league. He may have fallen short of the game's ultimate prize, but he helped revolutionize the way the game was played. At number 14, it's James Harden. Few players in history have been able to dictate the pace of play quite like the Beard. Though his athleticism never blew anyone away, Harden's footwork, vision, and ability to change speeds made him one of the toughest covers ever, while his combination of shooting, foul drawing, and playmaking made him one of the poster boys for basketball's analytics era. A disturbing number of postseason no-shows and his propensity for chaos have created some backlash for the 75th anniversary team member. But there's no denying Harden's place as an all-time great and offensive revolutionary. Since Harden debuted in 2009, only LeBron has scored more points, while only Bron, Chris Paul, and Westbrook handed out more assists. Harden and Westbrook are also the only 2 players in history to have multiple scoring titles and multiple assist titles to their names. Sticking with legendary guards, Chris Paul comes in at number 13. They call him the point guard for a reason. One of the smartest passers and great in-between scorers in history, peak CP3 was also a terrific perimeter defender who led the league in steals 6 times. Paul ranks 3rd all-time in total assists, and his assist-to-turnover ratio ranks 2nd among players in the top 100. Though he's never won a championship, winning has generally followed Paul wherever his basketball journey has taken him. He revitalized a temporarily homeless Hornets team, turned the Clippers into contenders, nearly pushed the Rockets past the most talented team of the modern era, carried the would-be tanking Thunder to the equivalent of a 50-win season, and helped take a Suns team riding a 10-year playoff drought all the way to the finals. At number 12, it's Dirk Nowitzki. No matter how many times Karl Anthony Towns tries to bestow the mantle upon himself, Nowitzki is still the greatest shooting big man in history. Throw in his underrated driving ability, and you have one of the most prolific offensive players of the 21st century. In the post-Jordan era, only LeBron and Kobe have scored more, a tribute to Dirk's consistent excellence and durability. Between 2000 and 2011, he averaged 21 to 27 points per game on close to 50-40-90 splits every year, while leading the Mavericks to 11 consecutive 50-win seasons, culminating in Dirk's crowning achievement, his unforgettable 2011 title run. That run will forever be cited as the goal for star players who dream of sticking it out with one team and eventually bringing them to the promised land. At number 11, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. In an era of skilled and versatile big men, the Greek Freak's speed and physicality set him apart. His ability to cover the length of the court in just a few strides, while also being able to change direction on a dime and vault into the air off 1 or 2 feet, has made him one of the best help defenders and probably the single deadliest transition weapon in the history of basketball. He's such a dominant interior scorer and defender that he's made a case for being the best player in basketball for the last half-decade, despite shooting woes and lack of a traditional bag. Along with Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon, he's one of only 3 players to have won MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP. Tipping off our top 10, it's Nikola Jokic, a unicorn among unicorns, an unguardable point center who elevates everyone he plays with. The near 7-footer is simultaneously his generation's best passer and post scorer. Jokic has some obvious limitations as a defender, but his sound positioning, disruptive hands, strength, and rebounding have helped him hover around average at that end. And given how otherworldly he is on the offensive end, that's been good enough to make him arguably the best player of the 2020s so far, especially now that he's proven beyond a doubt that his defense can hold up to playoff scrutiny. At number 9, it's Dwayne Wade. Flash loses out to Kobe as the best 2-guard of the post-Jordan era due to longevity. But at Wade's apex, you can make the argument that no post-MJ shooting guard has been better. Case in point, a 2008-2009 season that saw him average roughly 30 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Wade was never much of a long-range shooter, but it didn't matter because he was so adept at everything else. An explosive finisher, a slick passer, a mid-post savant, and a ridiculously good slasher who lived at the rim and free throw line, D-Wade was also a defensive pest who earned his reputation as the best shot-blocking guard of all time. Speaking of defense, Kawhi Leonard checks in at number 8. Nagging injuries and the public's revolt against load management may have some rolling their eyes at Leonard's place in the top 10, but there should be no doubt. The Claw's combination of size, jaw-dropping strength, instincts, 3-level scoring, and efficiency, not to mention those otherworldly hands, have made him one of the greatest two-way players in history. At his best, perhaps only LeBron felt as inevitable among players of this era. Kawhi's been blessed with a number of Hall of Fame teammates over the years, but his presence is the key reason why he owns the highest individual winning percentage of any player over the last 25 years. Kevin Garnett is number 7. The big ticket was as intelligent a player and as intense a competitor as the sport has ever seen. Despite years of mismanagement in Minnesota keeping him from pre-Boston playoff success, prime Garnett was a two-way force almost without equal in modern basketball. One of the NBA's earliest preps to pro success stories, KG was a unicorn before anyone even knew what that meant from a basketball perspective. He blended guard skills with a center size. As fearsome and versatile a defender as Garnett was, he was also a devastating face-up attacker who could handle, pass, and shoot from mid-range. Edging KG out for the number 6 spot is Kevin Durant. Durant never warmed to the Slim Reaper nickname, but it really is the perfect moniker for the near 7-footer. KD can handle the ball and attack off the dribble like a smaller scoring guard. For his career, he's shot roughly 54% from two-point range, 39% from deep, and 89% from the free throw line. He once averaged more than 6 assists per game. He can competently guard anyone outside of the traditional behemoth-type centers, while also serving as an excellent help defender and rim protector. He's a cross between a big man and a swing man, with 26,892 points to his name and a career scoring average of 27.3 points per game. There's nothing Durant can't do on a basketball court, which makes him as terrifying as the Grim Reaper himself at just under 6'11". The top 5 tips off with Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq takes a hit in these rankings because some of his best seasons came outside the 25-year period we're examining. But if we're talking peaks, Shaq's stacks up against anyone's on this list. He was the NBA's most unstoppable force for at least a half-decade, cementing that status by winning 3 straight Finals MVPs, something no other player besides Jordan has done. Pairing once-in-a-generation power with tremendous athleticism and balletic footwork, O'Neal's low-post prowess stood apart. He mauled everyone in single coverage and was a good enough passer to cook double teams too. His poor free throw shooting did hurt him at times, but if he caught the ball anywhere within spitting distance of the hoop, even climbing on his back usually wasn't enough to stop him from scoring. Defense was never Shaq's calling card, but he was plenty good and big enough during his prime given how dominant he was offensively. At number 4 is Kobe Bryant. Shaq probably tops Kobe when their entire careers are measured, and the big man was the Lakers' best player during their shared championship runs. But the time frame in question tips the scale in Kobe's favor. Take any chapter of Bryant's career, and each one probably merits inclusion here on its own. He was an All-NBA third-team selection as a 20-year-old in the lockout-shortened 1999 season. He was an All-Defensive first-team selection as a 21-year-old, as well as the second-leading scorer on a championship team. He served as one of the greatest supporting stars in history at the turn of the century, then carried lesser teams to respectability as an undeniable alpha in the years after Shaq's departure. He became a championship leader as a more mature and refined player to close out the odds. Then he pushed his body to the absolute limit to keep his beloved Lakers afloat in the first half of the 2010s, his Achilles eventually giving out before his competitive spirit ever did. He didn't crack the top 3 of our ranking, but none of his peers on this list carry the same cultural weight or icon status. Moving us into the top 3, it's Tim Duncan. Some may gasp at hearing Duncan's name above Bryant's, but for as iconic as Kobe was, Duncan impacted winning for a longer period of time and was the best player on championship teams more often. The worst team of Duncan's career still won 50 games. Chalk that up to San Antonio's organizational competence if you want, but Duncan is the Spurs way. Just ask Greg Popovich. Duncan's greatness was more understated than the rest of the top 5. Bank shots from the elbow aren't exactly the stuff of playground dreams after all, but he was no less dominant. The big fundamental soft touch, discipline, and footwork helped him carve up opposing big men on the offensive end, while his otherworldly positioning, instincts, and timing allowed him to dominate defensively while barely breaking a sweat. Steph Curry finishes as runner-up in these rankings. Curry's release and unlimited range have made him the best and most revolutionary shooter in basketball history, but that alone doesn't tell the story. Curry will always be synonymous with the 3-ball, but we're talking about a 6'2" guard who shot 56% from two-point range over the last 8 years. He's a tireless worker off the ball, he owns a masterful handle, can finish over bigger players at the rim, and his underrated passing allows him to leverage all the defensive attention he draws. Curry represents a 5-alarm fire for the defense the moment he crosses midcourt, and 5 sets of eyes follow him wherever he goes. His threat level is such that he can go scoreless and still be by far the most impactful offensive player on the floor. Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and even Durant deserve their flowers. But the Warriors becoming the team of the last decade and the modern game looking the way it does is all thanks to Steph. As if there was any doubt, our greatest player of the post-Jordan era is LeBron James. He was the most hyped prospect in modern sports history and somehow shattered expectations. He conquered Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's unconquerable all-time scoring record while averaging nearly 29 points per game in his 20th season. He's averaged 20+ points for 20 straight years. His 20s alone would have placed him among the game's all-time greats. Then he averaged more than 30 points in his age 37 season, led the league in assists in his age 35 campaign, and recorded his career high in rebounds in his age 33 season. The only player to have ever won Finals MVP awards for 3 different teams, no one has ever played the game as well for as long. No one has ever enjoyed a longer, more consistent run as the planet's top baller. No one has ever been as complete a basketball player as James was at his absolute best. Built like a linebacker, James runs like a sprinter, possesses the vision of the game's greatest point guards, and bullies opponents like the smash-mouth forwards of the 80s and 90s. He also once shot better than 40% from deep, around the same time he should have been winning Defensive Player of the Year awards. He may not be your GOAT, but if he's not your pick for the greatest player of the post-Jordan era, you haven't been watching the same game as us over the last 25 years.